So what are we doing today?
I've been asking myself that question since about 8 o'clock this morning.
I haven't stopped since 8 o'clock this morning. So, so I think I'm having a breather at the moment. Again, Nigel, this is one really for you, and it's maybe a subject of another discussion going forward. But how much do you cut at the moment without taking the risk that you're just not going to be able to come back in the future? You know, it's the old thing about, you know, cutting into the bone. It was very much this question of how much hit can we afford to take in the short term in order to avoid not having the sensible business there, you know, when things do come back.
I suppose my sense, though, talking to a number of clients, and pretty well every client I'm talking to is saying they're going to make redundancies. When furloughing ends, they're going to be making redundancies.
Yeah.
And their view is really, well, this has proved how much fat we've got, particularly on the administrative side, and to an extent on the fee earning side. They've realised they've now got some fat, and therefore they've got to make some cuts. And as you said in one of our videos, you don't want to. You always want to take advantage of a good crisis and actually make the cuts at a time it's going to be more acceptable.
And certainly, I was talking to an FD in industry the other week, and you know they're taking the view: cut early, cut deep. Sounds quite ruthless. But picking up on your point, Howard, if there's going to be redundancies, if you cut early and you cut deep, then if you need to recruit in a hurry because things do pick up, that might imply that there's going to be a reasonable pool of people available. But
yes,
you take a risk on
it. You do. And I think although I argued exactly the opposite when we started these conversations about the shape of the recession, I won't say persuaded, but persuadable that this might be more tick shape than L shape. And the signs of business picking up, they're there if you want to see them. And I think, a couple of managing partners I've spoken to in the last week are a lot more optimistic than they were a month ago. And my experience of talking to partners in European firms over the last 2 weeks has been an absolute eye-opener for me. I think I've spoken to 8 partners in various different firms in 7 different countries. There's only one out of 8 firms even contemplating redundancies later in the year.
Really?
And it's because their business model is very, very different to the standard UK business model, which is largely predicated upon a buoyant housing market. And many of the law firms, if not most of the law firms we work with, are reliant on conveyancing for a good chunk of their income, sizable enough to really hurt if it goes.
Yeah.
Whereas most of the firms I'm talking to in Europe, well, A, there is no housing market in most European countries to speak of, and B, they tend not to do B2C work, most medium-sized law firms in Europe. So they're I won't say any of them are complacent, but they're all doing quite nicely at the moment. And as I say, only one of them can see troubled waters ahead.
I think, we've discussed this before, and it all depends on, the shape of that recession. If it is more tick shape, V shape, fine, but also it's how long it goes along the bottom. If we see some pick up by the autumn, then I'm reasonably confident things will come back. But if it drags on, and we've talked before again about what happens in the first and second quarter of next year when the deferred VAT and tax is payable and these loans need repaying, if people haven't got the cash flow at that point, that's when you're going to see the business failures, I suspect. You've seen some already in the retail and leisure market, but
and I don't see how that can be good news.
No, that's right.
Interestingly, on the sort of risks and the business failures front, I was on floor management section meeting yesterday, there seems to be a view that we are now only a few weeks away from the first hit of unsavable firms going under. Nobody's quite worked out how the SRA is going to cope with it if there's a volume of firms that they can't actually cope with through interventions. And the second view that I picked up on yesterday, which was from another source, Mark, you and Paul might be ahead of me on this, is the concerns about what's going to happen on the professional indemnity insurance renewal in the autumn. Mm-hmm. It sounds as though the insurers are gearing themselves up for a hard line. And
yes, I think that's to a certain extent we were hearing that prior to COVID anyway, and I suspect this is going to be problematic. I mean, the issue is, I suppose, what claims come out of this, and whether remote working will have created additional claims in terms of security or losses or whatever. But I've not heard of a lot of claims going in yet. I don't know whether.
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah. So as to why should the pandemic harden the market, as well as what is the greater risk on professional indemnity? Yeah.
Well, does it? I mean, does the potential lack of business continuity because of failures actually increase the risk in itself for the insurers?
If a firm goes under, is there more likely to be a claim on its insurance? I suppose you could argue that if it has a chaotic few months, that last time could see more negligence claims, but not necessarily.
Are you convinced by the inefficiencies? I'm for the boutique firms and firms like ours. Yeah. I suspect we're probably working far more efficiently than we would do otherwise. We haven't got all traveling.
I think the question, going back to the point on PII, is are firms acting more recklessly in a way that is likely to get claims under the PII cover for negligence effectively? So you could argue maybe there's a lack of supervision, or there's going to be issues. I don't know. I've not seen it yet.
Is it going to be harder for people who are struggling on something to sort of have the conversation with the colleague nearby who actually does know?
Well, yeah, that's right. But they can use Zooms. They can phone. Yeah. I think I think there's often that nice benefit when you are in an office of if there's a tricky scenario of going to your mate at down the corridor and going, what do you think about this? But we all do that by phone anyway.
Yeah, we do, don't we? Yeah.
As far as the efficiency is concerned, I've not seen enough data yet. And in any case, I think there's always this suspicion, and until the chargeable time has actually been billed, how well was it used? The answer is I don't know.
Well, I think we could get onto a lovely conversation there about how good is chargeable time as a management tool.
Quite.
And how well do people use it when they're sat in their office, let alone when they're sat in their kitchen or back bedroom. It's about efficiency, isn't it, one way or another? And maybe you might find some firms will become more efficient on this.
I suspect they will. They won't have all the interruptions. They won't have the coffee breaks, the people putting their hand around the doors.
And people will be able to, rather than having to be at the office between 9 and 5 and get in 5, 6 or 7 hours, whatever it is. You go, well, at some point at home, do your 5, 6, 7 hours. It doesn't matter whether you sort of start at 7 and then have a couple of hours with your kids at lunchtime and then do some in the evening or whatever. If the work gets done well, who cares?
Yeah.
It's also noticeable as well. I'm finding that I was one of the worst in my old days of not turning up to meetings in time because I didn't want to waste my time waiting for other people to turn up. So I was always the last to turn up. But now everyone seems to turn up with a Zoom meeting on time, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay.
One of the things I'm picking up, and I'm sure you're hearing these conversations too, is the popping your head round the door, the water cooler conversation is the thing that people are missing most.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if there is a criticism of video conferencing, it's great for a bunch of people like us that know each other well, get along very easily, etc., etc. But for building new relationships, I'm not so sure it's so clever. And if you're a law firm and you've got a couple of new recruits and you want them thoroughly integrated, it's not going to happen so well like this, is it?
Can I just change the direction somewhat of the discussion in terms of Mark? A few weeks ago, you were talking about emerging issues from the lockdown, younger v older partners, and coping with technology. Is it worth just picking up on that, and you seeing any more? Well, explaining that a bit more, and seeing how that's developed.
I've not heard a huge amount more. I think initially, of course, back to this idea of people having to get used to working remotely, and some staff did it better than others. And I think it's not always a truism that young people are very good with technology and older people aren't. But across a law firm, I think you always get a few sort of dinosaurs or Luddites or whatever we want to call them that don't take well to new technology. And I think that was obvious early on. I suspect a lot of those have now improved because they realise they have to, and and it's no different to I suppose any other introduction of new technology in law firms. There were always people who didn't like it and fought against it, who had to be persuaded through a range of sort of carrots and sticks that they had to use it, be it time recording, digital dictation, whatever it is. So I've not heard a lot. I think that the more interesting issue is this around spotting those staff and those partners that have really stepped up to the plate and are adding value. And that could be through use of technology. It could just be getting on and doing the right things. So I suspect we've said that across law firms, people are looking at their staff and realizing that certain people have been furloughed now for sort of 8 weeks, and they're not spotting the difference in the running of the firm. So then when we come back to normal, will you actually unfurlough them, or will you take a difficult decision and make them redundant? And it'll be the same with partners in terms of, well, actually, this partner hasn't added a lot of value during this last few months. If they weren't there, that of course then gets us back to my favourite stuff as to what sort of agreement have you got in place, and how good is it, and can you deal with it? But I suspect that's what we're going to see, and some of that might be technology based, but I suspect it's more the other behaviours that we've talked about a lot in terms of that's where, as we know, the partnership disputes come from. It's sort of different values and people behaving in a way that goes against the ethos of the firm.
Nice to see you all.
Lovely to speak to you all, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.